Welcome to the Dudes of Thread podcast. The Dudes of Thread podcast is here to open your mind when it comes to specialty embroidery, applique, patchwork, and multimedia. From ideation to design to sourcing, we want to help you help your customers elevate their merchandise.
We've done the research, made the mistakes, and are excited to share this nerdy fashion content. Join us as we decorate our way to creativity, one stitch at a time.
So, welcome to the Dudes of Thread podcast. We actually have a special guest with us today. We are absolutely honored to have Bonnie Nielsen. So, we're absolutely thrilled to have Bonnie Nielsen with us today. She's a renowned embroidery expert, author of Punch Digitizing for Embroidery Design. She's here to share insights on just, oh my gosh, she's just an awesome, stunning, dimensional, thinking outside the box embroidery. But she's also got some other skills that we wanted to showcase today. I'm gonna plug this a couple of times in this episode, but we're really excited to have Eric Campbell and I, Justin Armenta. We did a technique toolkit at the Long Beach impression show last year. And it was the first time we ever tried to do basically like a panel type of seminar where we had, 3 different experts. And we're very honored to add Bonnie to that, to the second annual event this year. And one of the things that, since it was a very like last minute kind of thing, we got a chance to slide Bonnie in, and we're going to talk about it today, about a small, tiny and delicate embroidery. I think it's something that the entire industry has been starving for, and I think that it's something that the industry just really needs a little bit of help on that formulation of how to get the right thread, how to use the right needles, density, things like that. But today we want to definitely welcome Bonnie Nielsen to our podcast.
We're clapping for you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Joe, for that nice intro. Yeah. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yeah, happy to be here.
So Bonnie, can you give us a little bit of an intro of just kind of like how you came into this? And I know there's no way to keep a lifetime of experience brief, but we'll do the best that we can.
Well, I was unemployed. I don't know how many jobs I had, and they kept going out of business. It was really a joke in the family. Oh, is this place going to go out of business? It was just a bad time when I started working.
New Hampshire, is that correct?
Yeah, from New Hampshire. Yeah, small town, Laconia, Lakes Region, beautiful place. But I was basically out of work, and then I showed up again at the unemployment office, and they're like, "Well, Frau Nielsen, you're back here. I mean, Mrs. Nielsen, you're back." And I'm like, yeah, seems like wherever I go, they go out of business. And then they told me about this place with, it was a punch house. There were punch houses back then, where digitizing houses. There wasn't all this private stuff going on. And I went there, and I basically sat on his doorstep every morning until he hired me. And I got in, and I've been in now next year is 40 years embroidery.
Wow.
So long time.
You've seen it all.
Had this oh yeah. She's one of the thoughts that I had too is that, like, you mentioned standing, at the doorstep, kind of waiting for them to hire you. What was it about it that just was it the need for the job so much, or was there something about embroidery that gave you a really good amount of?
Well, it was the thing is, I really didn't know exactly what I was getting into. I mean, it was kind of like they were talking about embroidery, but I hadn't seen like I hadn't seen the embroidery machines and stuff. It just needed somebody to draw. My first 5 years there was actually drawing what they called cartoons, and they were designs which had to be 3 to 6 times bigger than the actual design size. And then you had to draw in every single stitch. I mean, every single stitch. And it was very intensive work. And I had an art background. I mean, I just didn't have enough money to continue with college. So, I mean, I had studied art. So even through high school, I was always taking classes. And then through college, I took that. And plus, I studied under two professional painters to learn some styles just to keep going. And this gave me an opportunity to at least use some of my skills and at least get paid for it. Wasn't very creative in the beginning, but over time, when they would let me work after, stay after work and do my own projects. And then I found like a whole world there that I thought, wow.
Yet again, I feel like it's, another scenario, because I feel like mine is the same way. Like, you don't choose it. It somehow it chooses you. And
yes,
you just roll with it. And I mean, to this day, I feel like, after doing this for over 30 years, hey, Joe, you must really like this. I don't know. I mean, it's all I've ever done.
No, that's a loaded question.
Right. It's a very loaded question, but
yes.
yeah. So you start, that's how you got started in an original punch house. And for those who aren't familiar, these are the paper punch tape houses where you would have, if you're familiar with like the way a player piano works, there's a grid and there's, this particular punch in this particular spot represents a specific operation that the microprocessor would basically kind of reverse engineer that concept and then tell the machine what to do. And so there was a paper tape, like a reel-to-reel paper tape that actually got
Yes.
on the machine.
And since our audience is digitizers and people in the merchandise field, we'll put a picture up just to show you or run a little video
Right.
of this, just to most people probably have never heard of it or seen it before, so
Right.
that'll be a cool little history to show them.
But I feel like, especially like the namesake of her book title, Punch, that's really where the name comes from, is that you're actually punching holes into a paper tape.
Yes.
And
Yes.
That's amazing.
to this day, the term is still used loosely.
Well,
you know,
if I can say that it was a big discussion between me and my husband, because it was kind of like, should I use digitizing? Everybody's talking about digitizing, but what I liked about punch, it's used a lot here in Europe, but it's also the only term that is very special for embroidery.
mm,
Nobody else had this word. You can digitize anything, you can digitize for all kinds of stuff, but punch was the word which was very special. And so I wanted that in the title. Plus I thought it sounded more, what do you call it, spiky, having the word punch.
yeah, it definitely has a punch to it, no doubt. It has an impact. So that's where you got started in the punch house, and then obviously your career grows with experience, and you're getting into the everyday production aspects of there's a new, because there's always like a new fabric or a new something that's come out that's changing and ever evolving industry. For just for example, I mean, in the last 15 years, the amount of performance fabrics that we've had to adjust our digitizing for. So
Yes.
you get through that experience, and then maybe walk us from there as to how you get to the next part to start working for thread companies and such.
Yeah, I mean, basically this punch house belonged to Madeira, and then what happened is I ended up working for ZSK, which make embroidery machines, and that's when I started actually doing the digitizing part of it. And we were still with, at that point, it went to floppy disk. You had these big disk things to work with, but I had a green monitor. That means I only had a blob of green. I couldn't see. When I was working on a design, it just got bigger and greener. And but you still had to draw in some stitch directions and some markings on your drawing. It wasn't until I think somewhere in the 90s that I switched over to on-screen punching. And I just remember all of this talk about how this wasn't going to work. Oh, that will never be. And here we are today. with practically AI going to take over on certain things. So I think, it was just a resolution. How do you say that? God, I can't remember my English words anymore. It evolved. I worked from one company to the other company, and then I ended up working for this really big, what do you call it? These companies that do advertising for all kinds of brands, and we just had really big companies like Philip Morris. I did work for Steven Spielberg's people. I did work for Shaquille O'Neal. We were the biggest promotional company in the United States. And then at the end of the 90s, everything kind of was falling apart for me. And I met Dieter, and he said, "Why don't you come to Germany?" So I just packed my bags and went. And of course, everybody else is freaking out. But I thought, hey, you only live once. And I was happy I did it, because here I was able to use my skills here. I was able to get a job and able to keep working, because I don't know what would have happened to me if I had stayed. A lot of people lost their jobs back then and had to move someplace else. So that's kind of the quick and dirty
So
background.
You've been in Germany now for how long?
25 years.
25. Wow. Got it.
Yeah.
And then you now work for Amann.
Mm-hmm.
On now for 7 years, right? Is that about right?
Yeah, 7 years. And what I was hired here for is to not just do great designs, which I have an opportunity to do, but my job is to help fix problems for people. Yep. Wherever our customers are, if they're sitting in China, they're sitting in Vietnam, they're sitting in India, I get their work, and then I have to analyze their digitizing files. I have to see the fabrics they're working on. I have to know what kind of threads they wanted to use. And you learn a lot about threads here, And you know that, Joe, you came and had a nice class with us. And also the fact that you looking at other people's punching. It's very interesting how they try to solve their problems. I find this quite interesting, actually.
Yeah, right, exactly. And just to mention really quick, I think we could probably put an image of the laboratory up, and we'll show that. But the lab that Bonnie works in is not only is it machine embroidery heavy, like there's some really fun machines in there to run your samples with, and real nice gear. But I don't know how many single heads are on the floor, Bonnie. There's quite a few single head sewing machines.
Oh yeah, we have. Oh God, I don't know. I haven't counted them, but the whole room is full of the sewing machines. Yes.
And to give the people an idea as to why there's so many, not just multi-head or multi-needle embroidery machines, but also single sewing machines, is because when we were there, they had I don't know if I should mention the name, but they had a really high-end aeronautical company in there, and they were testing fabrics and stitch strengths, and they were doing they're actually like their crew was actually like from the aerospace industry was like on the machines running our thread through its paces and trying to get familiar with how so it is a very research driven organization for making sure that the thread, stitch, everything, all the integrity is good from top to bottom and tested from top to bottom as well. I mean, just the Asian testing machine was just fun to watch, even though it just sits there and does like the same thing for half an hour or whatever it is.
Well, it's a very technical. I think after leaving my other company that I worked for many years, I did mostly design. I wasn't so into how the thread was constructed. It was never really talked about with me anyways. And when I came here, that was the first thing you get through this class, that class, you're really educated. And I must say, this company, they know how to make threads. They really know how to make threads, and they control it from the very beginning. It's from most of what I understand. And this is very technical here. It's just that every once in a while I get to do a fun design but most of the stuff I do here is very, very technical and trying to solve problems and trying to help our customers move on, giving solutions.
So I definitely want to put this, and I know that Jeremy's going to really have a lot of fun with this next segment here, but I definitely want to help paint the picture for our audience that there's the problems that she's talking about, and the best way to convey Bonnie's role to everybody. I would say just about anybody who's been to an impressions trade show has seen Bonnie's work. And even if you didn't know it, as digitizers, we don't really have the luxury of signing our art. But what, what's really cool is the majority of the hybrid machines. So, for example, like the ZSK that we see at the trade show that's running chenille on the bottom and in direct embroidery on the top. I don't know how many years now the Michael Jordan has been
He
used.
just came out last year.
Last year, okay. So the Michael Jordan example, Bonnie did punch that. That's a big staple design that she's done. She's done several like it, and we'll show those here as on the show. But I just want to point out that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Please. Just saying that we're even today we're still experimenting with the best, how can I put this? The best like Saba text, best product, because Amann has so many products that I feel that, especially on the U.S. side, we don't always know what they're specifically designed for, and to some degree, we don't know which arena they'll be best suited in. We know the technical capabilities of this thread and what it can do, but we're just learning about certain things that this particular Saba text that we're running now into the chenille machines is really growing traction quickly, so quickly that we obviously have our troubles or struggles, I should say, with how many colors, how fast can we get it made, and how fast can we get it out to the people, and then to almost to the point where we don't even, how much does it cost? Like, I don't know, let's just try to get it made as soon as possible. So we're still running through some of those, but anyway, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
No, with this Jordan design, does it require a special machine? It has to have a chenille.
Yes.
Right? It's a different type of
Yes.
machine, and I
Yes.
feel like those aren't readily available in the US, or at least we haven't come across them. I think it's a difficult process to find, because I love the mix of embroidery with the chenille, and that camo pattern is awesome. But I think the education is the biggest thing here in America, is because they can people can see things that they're seeing on Pinterest or in retail, but sourcing them is I think a big difficult hurdle for people, because chenille is usually overseas. We have to go to China or Turkey, but being able to find the machine companies and go to them and say, who are you selling these machines to? Because I think for me as a middleman distributor, I want all these cool techniques, but my normal embroiderer here in Colorado or in California, they have no access to this. So connecting those dots is an important, just as you guys making the great thread. It's like, all right, you have the technical side. How do we, as the consumer, find a source to create these type of designs? Because we're a design firm, so we want to push the envelope. We want to use the Saba and the Seraphyl thread, but it's been difficult to try to connect with that. And that kind of goes into my own question. How would you suggest conversing with embroidery shops of experimenting with new thread types or smaller needles, or the thicker Saba thread? How would you recommend people that aren't embroiderers connect with their embroidery shops to try to bring some of this new threads in? Like Joe said, the American market is very, I feel like it's just poly rayon and that's all they use. But do you have any suggestions that you've worked with to help people kind of go outside of the box when it comes to threads?
This is quite a loaded question. It's a very good question. What I try to do is not overload the people. If they have an interest in a thicker thread, then maybe we have a couple of different kinds of thick threads or whatever. And I would say, okay, you start with one, but then they have to check how their machine is. Do they have to, how thick is the thread? I mean, on most machines, embroidery machines, the average machines, they can run anything from a very small thread up to a thread, maybe the size, I think it's like 12 or something, or 30 weight, or a little bit thicker. Otherwise than that, when you start getting up with this design that I did, which we haven't shown a picture of yet, which is the Jimi Hendrix, that you need a very special machine. So in other words, I would start them out very slow. I would say, okay, try a number 30 weight. You'll have to do this, this, and this, give them some basic parameters to work with, and give them a sample and let them try. When it comes to the small stuff, we have like 3 different sizes. It goes from like from a 60, 75 to 100, which is very, very thin. And the number 60, okay, there's like, these are the, when I'm talking 60, 75, 100, these are the tickets that I understand in embroidery. There are other ticket sizes that we discuss here, which mean the same thing. They just correspond with the embroidery one, if that all made sense for you. But anyways, I would start them not with the thinnest. I would start them with the next smallest and say, okay, you'll have to use, instead of a density 4 that you have for a standard thread, you're going to have to go down to a 3. And get them to change out their needle. And if they say, yeah, well, I don't have time to switch out, you have 15 needles on a machine. Okay? Not one design does not have 15 colors.
Yeah.
Okay? Normally. Okay? So I always said to them, take one needle and put black on that needle with a thinner thread. And so when you come for your little tiny black letters, or your terrible, have to get all these little details with your running stitch, they could just switch over to that needle and you're running a thin thread already. You can mix it with your polyester thread, Isacord, whatever they're using. But this is something that I've always pushed, that they start out slowly, get used to it, see how it handles. And those are the only suggestions if I'm not there doing a class, or if we don't, we need to educate. I mean, I see it all the time. I get stuff in from these countries and I think, man, the whole industry is really, education is just not there. Ever since the computer industry hit, all that knowledge of people like me or people older than me, okay, I mean, I'm old enough now. Some people are already dead. They're not living. And this knowledge had just went away.
Yeah.
And then this school here in Europe, which they had, they don't teach it anymore. So there is a hole in the industry. Where did they get this information? And that's why I wrote the book, because I was asked to write the book. And all that's basically in the book was basic information about embroidery, things that they really should pay attention to. And then from there in the back, there's some, fancy stuff. But in general, we've got to not overload the people. They're busy every day trying to make a buck. They have to pay their bills, they have to pay this and that. And of course, they don't have time to play all day. I understand this. But if you've got 15 needles on a machine, I'm sure there's one needle you can put the thin thread on. And that's how I would basically go about it. Or I would suggest people, if you want to try something out, you're going to have to take the time. There is no magic wand that I can say, poof, your machine will run beautiful and just do it. You have to know how to punch for it. You have to know how to set your machine for it, what needle you need to use. There are a lot of technical information. And I think what's really sad that's happened in any area of handarbeit, handwork, okay, is that people from the outside who want something from you think, why does it cost so much? Why is that? They don't realize that you might sit there for 10 hours on something or 3 hours on something. They have no clue. I have people come up to me and say, here's my design, Bonnie. Can you put that into the machine and embroider this for me? And I'm like, well, if that was the case, then you could do it yourself. You know, it's just something that I think that people really need to be educated. And it amazes me after 40 years that my family don't even understand what I do.
Yeah.
They think I'm sitting there by hand embroidering. Still. It's really crazy how this is. But yes, that's how I would go about it. I wouldn't overwhelm them. I would slowly introduce them, constantly stay in contact, and just try to get them going.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning as well that for anybody out there who's looking to buy a hybrid machine like this that can do, the embroidery as well as the chenille. I think it's not even a 30% more commitment. I'd say it's one of those like twice the commitment to have a machine like that, because you're also talking about getting into digitizing for chenille, for a lock stitch type of machine, which is significantly different from direct embroidery. So then that's going to narrow the amount of, unless you got it in house, it's going to narrow the amount of digitizing support immediately. I just feel like there's not near as many digitizers out there that can completely. I'm just saying this from like an offshore or where people are typically getting their files from these days. That's a lot of confidence that's going to have to ride on that screen digitizer, if you will, to be able to do successful chenille and potentially not have a machine, right there at their fingertips that they could take it out and test it and make sure it runs right, especially on a job. I mean, the Jordan, the Hendrix, these designs that Bonnie has created, they are designed to run at a trade show like all day. They're designed to keep the machines busy so people walking by can see, the progress that's been made per every design that gets run out. But I think this is really important to note that, if you're out there and you're looking to buy one of these really awesome machines, everything that Bonnie said, it really rings true with the kind of commitment that you're going to have for spending, quite a bit more than just what it would be on a single head to have the chenille option. But it's super cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah, this if I could just, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the one thing about these machines with the moss and chenille and embroidery, I mean, that was the first time I seen it combined, the machine. I only saw like the older machines where you just did chenille, or they did it by hand. They had these old cannoli machines. I don't know. It was a hand operated thing. And this was the first time that I even had the opportunity to do this, where I could really switch from, especially on a smaller machine. I had a really big one at one point that I could work on by Madeira, but this machine, you can actually hoop stuff up, I mean, you can put actual clothing on the machine. Before it was always, a big piece of fabric. And this is what I find totally interesting, that we can, do ready-made clothing already with the chenille and not have to make it a patch or something. So I think the machine is, it costs more money and all this stuff, but you save a lot of money when you fill something with chenille.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. Is
texture to
oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised too, like how heavy the thread really is, but the way that it does the loop and everything, and the way that your hand goes to touch and feel how soft it is, and you'd be really surprised how it doesn't feel like, if it still feels pliable and supple, it doesn't feel like it's this stiff, hard backing, where someone just put in 50,000 stitches just to make this fill stitch in the background, only to just, cap the ends with a satin and call it a day. I mean, chenille just will always maintain that nice soft carpet
Yeah.
feel. But
Right. But
but
the other thing that changed, Joe, over time with these machines, well, the fact that you can change the height of the loop, how high you want that. I could never do that before. And sewing with our Sabatex, is it Sabatex number 60? Our chenille, I have that right? I just can't remember all these. We have so many brands. I found that they stand. The loops stand. If you don't get this kind of, there's some threads out there, and what happens is if it's a very soft thread, kind of like acrylic soft threads. Problem is they make the loop and then they fall over. So when you come back to do the next set of loops, you're trampling down half your loops. And this thread that we have here from Amann, they all stand. It's like little soldiers. It's really great to watch it embroider because they're all like little trees standing there, and then you come back with the next swipe. And it's really, I was never able to just switch colors out like I can now that it trims and goes to the next one. Or, just it was so easy to use this time around. And this opened up many, many possibilities. Unfortunately, I don't have a machine here, but a friend of mine does. Maybe I should go visit him and see if I can do some more research with it. But
now, speaking of, just because we're talking about chenille, but speaking of the Jimi Hendrix design, there was a much thicker thread that we're using on certain parts of that machine as well.
Yes. These were threads for automotive, actually, or for shoes and stuff. And I just wanted to try to make a design with these really thick threads, and it was the very first time. That's the design. That was the very first design I ever did with thick threads. That there, when I put that on the machine, I really held my breath a few times because I thought, gosh, am I going to break needles? How is this going to be? And that thread, what's really cool about the Serafil, it's also Serafil. It's not Serafil fine, but it's Serafil. It's in the same line. And it's really round. You can really see it when you see the jackets and you see the embroidery. The thread is super, super round. So you really have this great effect that you have even more, I guess you would say, more dimension to the design because the thread is so round and lays very much still on the top. And I think
I didn't realize it until I zoomed in to see how thick that thread is. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really looks like rope, like just because of the way it's twisted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that design with Jimi Hendrix is very special because I could not make the stitches with automatic programs, meaning, I couldn't just put in a line and fill the stitches. That whole face, most of his face, especially the yellow parts there that make the nose and all that stuff, that's me just sitting there putting single stitches in by hand.
Wow. Just
click, 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 just to get this movement, because I've been so long in, I almost can envision it, or I can feel it. It's very hard to explain this experience that I go through when I'm punching. I'm not here off this planet. I'm somewhere in there with this texture and this movement. I'm always feeling movement when I punch, and especially stuff like this anyways, because I want to express movement. I mean, what happens in the end, if it's Jimi Hendrix, a horse, or whatever the heck it is almost is not, that's nice when it looks great, but for me, it's the experience of actually doing the work. And actually, it's almost like, I guess when I paint, pushing the brush and making it do something. Sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because I can't get things to blend the way I would like it. But it's another animal, and sometimes you just have limitations. But the experience of that was
And so
Really exciting for myself. Yeah.
for our viewers, can you talk a little bit about like, was it a special machine you had to use, or was it a normal machine, but you had to configure it very specifically
No.
yeah.
Right. This is the technical machine that you saw here, Joe, this big
Yep.
ZSK that we have. And it's got two tension rows on not just one tension bar where you can turn all the knobs. It's got
Sure.
two. And so now with this really thick thread, I can really get the tension on it, and then I can sew through leathers or foams. It's basically, they were making these machines to be able to do heavy duty stuff for the automotive industry or technical stuff. And I just basically use that machine. But what's really cool is that I was able to take this Jimi Hendrix, make basically the top of him, his head, his hair, and all that stuff with some of the real thick threads. But when it came down to the bottom half, which probably looks a bit more feminine because I got these little flowers, and then I wrote
Good vibes.
the words there, I had to go to, I went down to ease cord, number 40 weight. And that's what's great. I have a machine where I can run a 40 weight up to, these really super thick threads in number 20. I mean, I never did that before. I mean, and it got so popular that a couple of us all have our own jackets.
Yeah. We talked about this also, Bonnie, is where there's shops out there that are going to use some finer threads. They're actually winding finer bobbin threads to achieve a better detail. So they're not using the same like Tech 16 or whatever it is that standard bobbin.
When you don't mean to interrupt you, Joe, but yeah, you hit on a very important point with the bobbin. I found if I have like different things here I can try out, and I've tried out, a bobbin that's very, very thin. That if you have a thin fabric, and you use this super fine embroidery or Ceraphil, say 100. Then everything's very soft and flat, but if you wanted a little bit more underneath it, you could use a little bit heavier bobbin, and then you get a different effect. So the bobbin thread size, I can't say, well, if you use this and you use that at all.
It varies, right?
Yeah, all varies because we're all trying to do, I don't know what kind of fabrics they're working on. I don't know all these things. So I can't say, use this 180 or use this or that 150. It's more the fact that they have these standard threads we use for bobbins, but sometimes I can bump it up, in order to get a bit more, how do I want to say, a bit more heavier look for the upper part.
Mm-hmm.
That it gives it a bit more of more body to it.
Sure.
I have noticed that you can play with that. But yeah, I know this is another. Oh, this makes it even more scary for people to try. Yeah,
because winding your own bobbins is not something. I mean, the first thing you do when you get a bobbin winder is you find somebody else who wants it because you're going to just be buying bobbins by the gross in a production shop. But like I said, you go to the malls or you go to the high end retail environment, and you're going to see that often the bobbin thread is just a smaller version of the top thread, and it's just they've spun their own bobbins, and that's just that here in the States, people are just like, forget it, that's the line. I'm not going to go past that line and wind my own bobbins. And I agree.
Yeah, but the other thing is that I noticed when I use paper bobbins, as it gets lower, there's more movement because the paper, it's lighter. It's just spinning inside. And with your normal, kind of like metal bobbins, I just noticed that there's a little bit of weight left in there. And so I don't have this huge difference in tension on the backside when you look at it. But it's more of the technical end. Everybody can do what they want, but winding your bobbins is an actual hint of good quality embroidery.
Yeah, exactly. So so for our viewers, again, just to reiterate, Bonnie Nielsen, author of Punch, for digitizing and embroidery. is going to be speaking at the Long Beach Impressions exposition, along with Eric Campbell, Justin Armenta, and myself on the Technique Toolkit. And Bonnie, it's been great. It's been so much fun having a chance to talk shop with you today, and we really appreciate you and your time.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Auf Wiedersehen.
What were you saying? Yeah.
No, I don't say it properly, but thank you for your time, Bonnie. I know we could probably go 2-3 hours. I have so many questions.
Yeah.
But, it's great because we want to push the envelope. We can see why a lot of embroidery shops they don't want to do anything other than this is the way we've done it. And I get it, on the financial side, but on the creative side, we want to be able to push the envelope and try something new. And anyone can do the left chest embroidery, but on the retail side, how are you going to differentiate your brand from the next brand down the street? Corporate wear is one thing, but when you're starting to retail, you got to think about those things. And there's just not enough information out there, at least in the USA, to show that you can try these different threads and styles and sizes. It's really exciting to know that, the potential is it's limitless if you can make it happen. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today.
That's right. Okay. Thank you very much. I really had fun. Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks again, Bonnie.